Three, two, and one. We're live. This is the Rich Report, bringing you the richest content across entertainment. My name is Kevin Richardson, and doing the horns down for us this morning, just to in protest of what the Big 12 might do in terms of officiating that specific gesture. Evan McNelia and Sean Clark, gentlemen, how are you doing on the start to another weekend?
Yes, can't wait to talk about how stupid the horns down thing was. That's terrible, but doing good. Started working at Target 2 days ago, which is why I wasn't on the stream on Wednesday. Michael May did a great job filling in. It was great to see him on, and yeah, uh, these finals are very interesting, aren't they, Evan McNelia?
Very interesting. Have been the most exciting finals of my lifetime, with a team that I finally care about in the finals, but at the same time getting stressful. That last game was making me a little uncomfortable, but let's get right into it.
Now, before we talk about the NBA finals, the biggest news coming today: Damien Lillard might request a trade, or is on the brink of requesting a trade out of Portland. Pretty much lifer for Portland. One that, he's a guy that pretty much resembles what Portland represents, and he's that Portland guy. He's the heart and soul of Rip City, and it's kind of hard to picture him anywhere else just because he's so intertwined with Portland Trailblazers. He's arguably the greatest Trailblazer ever. I mean, if you want to go all the way back to when they won their lone title, sure, go ahead. But what Damian Lillard has accomplished in the NBA, being a four-year guy out of a small school at Weber State, to him being an all-out superstar in the NBA is quite remarkable. Just to see him leave a small market when his whole entire basketball career has been in small markets is going to be kind of shocking, to say the least. And obviously we've seen the Knicks being thrown around as a potential market, Warriors for some reason, and Lakers and the Miami Heat, large markets, and that's why I always bring up the argument that what's the point of keeping around these smaller market teams? Because who's requesting a trade to go there? I mean, I look at Paul George, who left Indiana, Oklahoma City, goes to LA. Anthony Davis, New Orleans to LA. I mean, there's so many examples out there of, LeBron, the biggest example, from Cleveland to Miami, back to Cleveland, got his title, but then went to Los Angeles. There's just so many examples of superstars that have started out in their small markets, had success, but their management couldn't get them that second start to become a contender. You could be a viable playoff contender, but they want those titles. And to do that, the only way you can do that is to go to a large market like in LA, New York, Boston, Miami. So, Sean, I'll start with you. What do you think would be the best fit for a Damian Lillard? And what was your reaction to the news that, yes, he now really wants out of Portland?
It is a little unfortunate. I mean, it's not unfortunate for me. I'm a Nuggets fan. Get out of my division. But it is a little unfortunate because I thought Damien Lillard was going to be a lifer here, and it was entertaining seeing him carry the hopes of Rip City on his shoulders. However, at the same time, I am very happy he did, and here's why. The Portland Trailblazers organization is a dumpster fire, to say the least. They are basically the Walmart version of the Packers. How so? Because they've been carried by one guy for basically a decade. The Packers are just a little more competent and actually has had success, although once it gets to the NFC Championship, it's game over. But it makes sense. Portland has done absolutely nothing for the last 6 years to improve the team. Nothing. When Damian Lillard got to the playoffs, the first couple weeks of his career, you know who the Blazers had? LaMarcus Aldridge, Wesley Matthews, Nick Batum. They all left in a single offseason. I thought, okay, Portland's not going to be as good. Suddenly they get better. Why? Because Damian Lillard goes off and CJ McCollum becomes the Robin. We talked about Robins a few days ago, and that was another good one as well. But Portland's been a mess. Portland regressed, and they did absolutely nothing to improve their team. They barely got in the playoffs in 2020, and then this past season, they were basically cannon fodder to the MVP Nikola Jokic, and Nuggets got sweet revenge. But the Chauncey Billups hire was questionable, to be kind. Terry Stotts and Damian Lillard had a great relationship. Even though Terry Stotts wasn't the best coach in the world, he and Damian Lillard had a great relationship, and hiring Chauncey Billups was very shady. And again, what else have they done? Damian Lillard was not treated well, just like Aaron Rodgers has not been treated well in Green Bay. And when you're the face of a franchise and you're not treated with the utmost respect, you want out. It's plain simple. This phrase goes in life along with sports. Only go where you're wanted/needed. Don't hang around in a place where you're not being treated well and you're not wanted. This goes for friend groups. This goes for jobs. This goes for sports teams as well. Don't hang around in places where you're not wanted. Don't hang around places where they don't treat you with respect. And Portland is not treating Dame with respect, and they need to let him go to a team that actually will treat him with respect. And who would this team be? Oh, it's simple. The Knicks. The Knicks would be literally the most perfect place that he could possibly go. The Eastern Conference is a bit weaker. The Knicks don't really have a superstar point guard on their team, so he would fill in so nicely. And also, if you look at the Knicks were very a mid-range and inside scoring team. That's what they emphasized on. The Knicks weren't really that good of a three-point shooting team. Damian Lillard can hit shots on half court with his eyes closed. Okay. So Damian Lillard would be the perfect fit for the Knicks. And I think that's what the Knicks should go all in and try to trade for Damian Lillard. Just don't give up your entire team like you did with Carmelo Anthony, because you literally just made the Nuggets a decade ago so much better. And all you got was one playoff series win over the aging Boston Celtics. So the Knicks should go off for this trade, but to a certain extent. Don't give up your entire team. Okay, as a Nuggets fan, I know how much it worked out when they gave us their entire team a decade ago, and they end up getting much better.
For Lillard, I think I said it a couple weeks ago when we talked about potential landing spots for him. Lillard's market value is going to be so high. I don't know what a team's going to have to give to Portland for them to be willing to give up that player, So I like what you're saying, Sean, about like the New York Knicks going and getting him. And I do think that would be the best fit and spot for him personally. And he'd be happiest in that market if he wants a bigger market at this point. And that is the reason he wants out of Portland. So, it's just, how do they get Lillard without giving up their entire team is my question, because they don't really have any solid superstars. And I don't think they want to give up Julius Randle after the way he carried the team last year and he was the most improved player. So, I think the Lakers would have a better shot at trading for him. But I think the New York Knicks would be the best landing spot for Lillard for the future of his career.
Now, there are some interesting, potential trade scenarios. I look at someone like Daryl Morey, who probably will make a big, push to try to acquire Damian Lillard with Ben Simmons' inconsistency, to say the least, when it comes on the offensive side. But if you are to trade Simmons to Portland for a guy like Damien, such a great shooter, you have to have shooting in return. Regardless of what happens, Portland needs a shooter that can knock down, have a 20, 25 point per game average on a nightly basis. And if you're going to trade Ben Simmons over to Portland, yes, it helps their defensive side, but they're going to need a shooter to go along with CJ if you're not going to dealt him. So maybe a guy like Seth Curry comes in and could, maybe go Seth Curry and Ben Simmons and package deal, whatever future, draft picks in for Damian Lillard. But maybe I'm not trying to get, crazy here, but maybe the Clippers move Paul George. Clippers need a point guard. They don't have a legit floor general that can score consistently. Reggie Jackson's not really a floor general, and Patrick Beverly is not a consistent scorer. So the Clippers need something at the one. They have some interior problems as well. So the Clippers have a lot of work to do this offseason. So they could be a potential dark horse contender to go after Damian Lillard. But maybe, look, I know nobody wants to see Dame go to the Lakers. That would be the worst case scenario, doomsday for LA. However, I don't think they'd be able to have all three. Maybe you deal a younger Anthony Davis who has those injury concerns, and he would help Portland a lot, in the interior, and he can stretch out and knock down the three whenever. So you get a superstar in return, but is that, high injury, factor going to weigh in if you want to trade Damian Lillard for an Anthony Davis straight up, or you throw in a couple other Laker players as well? That's kind of an interesting thing. I just don't see a clear path to where Damian Lillard ends up as a Laker. But Sean, what do you think is that best destination for Damian? Is it in LA? Is it in Miami potentially? Is it somewhere else? Maybe it's Philadelphia. Just where do you think he best fits?
Outside the Knicks, I would say that he best fits with the Lakers because the Lakers don't really have that true point guard. I know LeBron is there, but let's be real here. LeBron isn't a true point guard. His true position is a forward. So I think that him fitting in with LeBron and Anthony Davis would be tremendous. I mean, they would have absolutely no depth whatsoever. They would have to trade a lot of that depth. And they would basically be kind of like, going to college basketball, 2012 Kentucky Wildcats, where they literally just didn't have a bench whatsoever. And they just play their starters all the time. They'd be exhausted and they would lose a lot of games regular season. But as long as they get into the playoffs, they would be able to just absolutely dominate because they would have the dominant LeBron. You would have a dominant post press with Anthony Davis, and then you would have Lillard who could just shoot from anywhere. So I would say that the Knicks and the Lakers are his two best destinations.
I'd have to agree on that one. Pairing up Damian Lillard, if you are able to trade that depth, if you're the Lakers, and bring Damian Lillard in and just have three stars who dominate the court whenever they're on together, and then they go sit down and your team sucks for a couple minutes. If that's the identity the Lakers choose to go with, I think they could reap the most benefits out of uniting those three guys together. But again, like Cameron said, it's hard not to imagine them having to send someone like Anthony Davis to obtain Lillard. So, but if they're able to create a big three in LA, I think they're going to be hard to stop in the Western Conference, no matter who you put on the opposite end of the court from them.
Now on to the NBA Finals. The Milwaukee Bucks defended home court, and we now have an even series. It's going to be a best of three to determine a champion, going back to Phoenix for Game 5 tomorrow night. Evan, they got it done. Phoenix was up 8-9, looked like they were going to run away with it, but Milwaukee fought their way back. Chris Middleton had a Chris Middleton game, finally showing up at the right time, similar to what he did against Atlanta when he did take over and led the Bucks and won the series for them pretty much. But also, I mean, we got to look at the highlight of the night. That was Giannis blocking DeAndre Ayton on a lob. Yes, was it not the best of lobs to Ayton? Sure, but no one else in this league is going to make a play like that. Giannis, with his length, his size, is the only guy in the league that can make a block like that. And look, I'll flat out say, as clutch as LeBron's block was in Game 7 of 2016, I just think just on pure difficulty that Giannis is way above that. We know LeBron is the most physically gifted athlete the NBA has ever seen. We know this, but for Giannis to pull something off like that was just remarkable, especially with him still, being sus on that left knee. You never know what could happen with any type of landing, any little tweak toward that left knee who knows what could happen. So just see him with his confidence and his bounce, I think, is the best thing Milwaukee could see. And that could be that energy boost they needed to say, yep, you know what, we got this. Giannis looks to be fully healthy. We're good to go. We got this. But Evan, I know you're pretty loud and vocal about the officiating. The officiating was bad both ways, but especially late, since it seemed like Devin Booker with 5 fouls was just not going to get that 6 to foul out because Adam Silver needs his superstars to remain in games like this. But overall, good win for the Bucks. But what were your thoughts on Game 4?
I mean, with the officiating, it felt like a 2K glitch out there, man. Like, why isn't this guy getting out of the game? Like, that's his 8th, 9th foul right there, down the stretch of the final few minutes of that fourth quarter, which are stressing me out. But that Giannis block, LeBron's chase down off the backboard, just absolute thundering block from Game 7 a couple years ago was huge. but Giannis rotating his body 180 degrees against one of the better young post players coming up in the NBA and DeAndre Ayton, and holding it there and just sending it back the opposite direction. It was the moment I realized officiating was not going to beat the Bucks that night. I realized that Giannis and what we had going and the energy that we had on the court was enough to overcome whatever, player with 9 fouls in the game there that was still there. So, that block, it'll be very memorable if they go on to win this series. Even if they don't, I think it'll be a memorable finals moment and will go down in history. But I think it will only remains that much more important if they go on to win the series.
What an awesome NBA game this was. You had the block, Pat Connaughton with the go-ahead 3, which is interesting because Cameron was roasting Pat Connaughton for taking the final shot in the Eastern Conference Finals, and whichever game that was, he took the final shot and they lost. I think it was game 1, maybe. So Pat Connaughton, huge shot there. Chris Middleton, what have I been saying this entire postseason? If Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday step up for the Bucks, they're probably the best team in the NBA. And, well, they kind of were, because Chris Middleton went absolutely off in the fourth quarter, making some huge buckets. And their depth's up. Also, there was a play where Chris Middleton missed a wide open 3, but Pat Connaughton got the putback, which was a huge play, cut it to 1, and then Connaughton hit a go-ahead 3 later. So the depth from Milwaukee stepped up, but Chris Middleton hit some huge baskets, and Giannis has shown that he is a superstar. And one of my friends who is a huge basketball fan said it best. We are basically entering the Giannis era, where the Bucks are basically going to be in the finals each of the next few years, and he's probably going to get a couple rings and solidify himself as a top 20 all-time best player. So that's the era we're in right now, and the Bucks are 2 wins away from cementing that to be the case. Because if the Bucks can win the final this year, who's to say they can't do it next year or the year after that? They have finally figured things out after multiple playoffs of underachieving. Obviously, we all know how much they disappointed in the bubble last season, where the Miami Heat basically just threw them out of Orlando, so to speak. And, the Bucks were very sus last year, but did they figure things out? And Giannis with the clutch play and being a superstar, and Chris Middleton being the ultimate Robin this postseason has been sensational. But Devin Booker also was sensational. It seemed like he couldn't miss last night. And I got to be honest, these next 2 or 3 games are going to be must-watch television. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, and someone that's bringing up potential question marks because he's never been there, Chris Paul had a disastrous game 4, only 10 points. I believe he had 5 turnovers. Just an awful, awful night from CP3. And once again, I bring this up. At what point does Monty say we are starting Cameron Johnson? Another double-digit point performance from Cam Johnson. He played 29 minutes, but still, he played more minutes than Mikal Bridges. But at some point, do we just say, you know what? It's time to insert him and give him all the minutes possible? Because it just seems like he's going to knock down those clutch shots when a Mikal Bridges on the court really can't do that. Only 7 from Mikal Bridges in game 4. And DeAndre Ayton, surprisingly, was shut down as well. Only 6 points. He had 17 boards, but only 6 points. But Cam Johnson seems to be that guy. If given, the confidence that if Monty believes in him and his teammates do, this is a guy that can play in those closing minutes and potentially win a game alongside Devin Booker. I just don't see Mikal Bridges being that guy. And while Jay Crowder can get his, I don't think he's going to be a guy that knocks down a big shot in a clutch moment. But going back to Chris Paul, Sean, just how detrimental is it that a guy that's worked this hard to get to this point, might kind of be struggling and might be in his own head, trying to get the foul calls that he didn't really get in Milwaukee? He'll probably get them back in Phoenix, but he didn't get them in Milwaukee. Just, do you think that his poor performance in game 4 might hurt the Suns in these potential final 3 games?
I'm not worried about Chris Paul, to be completely honest with you. I think it was just a bad game. Chris Paul has not shown a pattern of struggling in big games this postseason. he single-handedly eliminated the Nuggets. And then against the Clippers, Paul had some huge games, and Paul was huge in games 1 and 2. I think this was just a bad game, and I think that Paul maybe was a little rattled because it was on the road. But I think back home he'll get more confidence. He's going to calm himself down. I think he's going to have a huge performance, considering when his team needs him the most. And I think that he'll also allow Devin Booker to go off a little bit more and maybe take a little less pressure off. If I'm not worried about Chris Paul.
I'm not that worried about Chris Paul either. He's such an experienced veteran, and he knows how to handle himself after coming off a bad game. I think he'll be able to bounce back in front of the home crowd in Phoenix. And I do think the Suns take game 5 of the series at home. So I think it's just about Chris Paul taking care of the basketball, and maybe if he could shoot a little bit better. I think he was 5 for 13 the other night, and which is not too bad of a night, but at the same time, it's not where you want your main guy to be. He's your other superstar on this team aside from Devin Booker. You need him in the starting lineup and performing well if you want to win the series. So I think Chris Paul may have a huge bounce back game in game 5. Devin Booker may just carry them, but he can't continue to play the way he played in game 4 if they want to win the series.
Let's jump away from sports for a little bit and talk about some going-ons in the MCU, because 2021, now we're getting the second half of the year. It's a big time for the Marvel Cinematic Universe to really start popping. We got movies coming out. Black Widow just came out. We got the Loki finale. All 3 of us have seen Black Widow. So just overall quick thoughts. And, I'll go first. I'll honestly say that just seeing that Natasha Romanoff was able to kind of reconvene with her family and, reconnect, it kind of makes you a little bit sadder about her outcome in Avengers Endgame. Just a little bit. I didn't love the film, but I think it was just fun enough to where it's definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it yet. Some people are big fans of the villain Taskmaster in the film, and yes, Taskmaster is probably well underwritten than what the character is in the comics, but I mean, it's not a terrible character. There was some cool stuff that Taskmaster did, but yeah, I think it's a fun, enjoyable film. Obviously, it's not going to stand out in any way, shape, or form, but still enjoyable. Sean, what did you think?
Black Widow was a fine movie, and not fine in in the very complimentary sense. I'm talking about it was just fine. Okay, it was okay. In my review that's available on the site, I gave it a 7 out of 10. It's an okay movie. There were a couple really good performances from David Harbour and Florence Pugh. Also, there was a really cool prison break scene in Russia. That was pretty awesome. But this movie isn't really bad. It's just there's nothing really special about it. Scarlett Johansson, I thought, had a very underwhelming performance, and just there wasn't much emotion away from her. The action was pretty bland, as was Taskmaster. And overall, I understand that this movie couldn't have been made before 2016, but this is not a movie we needed, considering we're about to go into multiversal madness here in Phase 4. So it just felt like filler, and it wasn't really needed. So it didn't have that much of an impact in it. But at least with a couple good performances and decent action, it was watchable, which is why I give it a 7 out of 10.
I gotta kind of take a different road than you two here. I absolutely hated the movie. I was not enjoying it during my watch through. And I'll be honest, I'm not a comic, I've read superhero comics before, but I don't follow the comics. I don't know all the storylines and stuff. So I don't necessarily have that background that someone who is a fan of the comics has. I did not like the direction they took with this movie, with Black Widow. Because I felt that back after they did Avengers, and I think that came out in 2011 or 12, as a kid, I was like, yeah, Black Widow as one of the Avengers, she deserves one of her own movie, and she deserves it to be great and amazing. And I thought it would compare to how good Captain America was, the first one that came out, and Iron Man. But to me, this was just a very filler stopgap movie, kind of in the middle, put in the middle of the timeline for Marvel to make some money off the character before her contract expires. And with the movie itself, it felt like they did not care whether or not someone could do a Russian accent to play a Russian character. And depending on the scene to scene, they're cutting in and out of the accent. And it just kind of threw me out of it a little bit. And I thought the cinematography was a little jumpy with the camera work and whatnot in the action scenes. And it just felt clunky and just not like it wasn't an action movie that makes you say, I need to watch that again to experience all of those scenes again in real time. It doesn't really have that special effect for me. And so I was just disappointed because I felt like the character Black Widow deserved more, like some sort of badass spy movie, like where she's like fighting her own huge villain. But it was very much just like people were there because they were there because the script said they were there. And I don't know. I just wasn't that big of a fan.
Yeah, and it's nothing to the Black Widow character's fault or Marvel Studios' fault, because in her initial contract with Marvel Studios, before Kevin Feige became the overall top guy, her contract stated that she could not be the lead in any MCU film, and that the guy that was previously in charge for Feige said no, pretty much said no white cis male could ever be as marketable, marketable compared to one that is white and cis, which is why, you know, Iron Man, Captain America, they took over Thor as well. But obviously that was proven wrong because Black Panther did over $2 billion at the box office. It's still one of Marvel's most successful movies of all time. And obviously there's Infinity War, Endgame, and so what. But yeah, that was proven right. And just when Kevin Feige takes over, you know, it just the MCU, I think, got better, because there was great stuff before, you know, with the original Avengers pretty much launching this. Wow, this is like a Super Bowl every time an MCU film goes to theaters. And, you know, I can't stand those people that are pretentious and go off and say, well, stop watching Star Wars and Marvel stuff because it ruins cinema, and The Godfather is the elite movie of all time. It's just, you can enjoy fiction, you know, as long as there's some way you can connect to it, or just even have the slightest bit of fun, you know, that's good. It doesn't matter that, oh, well, they're just CGI, you know, just works. As long as you can find an emotional attachment and you're invested in the characters, that's quality. Whether it's Star Wars, look, then there are bad Star Wars films and there are pretty poor MCU films, but overall, I think they've done a great job. Because if the MCU, let's say there's no MCU at all, Star Wars doesn't exist. If Star Wars doesn't come out in the 1970s and changes pretty much cinema as we know it, I think film and cinema would be kind of a niche thing. It wouldn't be as popular as it is. You need those blockbusters to get people in the theaters. And that kind of leads them into, okay, you know what, maybe I want to see some more obscure stuff, some more, you know, pretty much out there stuff, which is how we get movies like The Lighthouse, which I enjoy. I think Sean enjoys, but others don't really enjoy all that much because it is a pretty weird film. But if we don't have something as blockbuster and as profitable as Star Wars and as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we don't get those other movies that you can say, yes, I'm a big fan of that as well. And movies really would be niche, and it'd be like, oh, it would be like every movie kind of just have a cult following. Sure, there'd be great ones out there, but it would just all be cult followings. You wouldn't have this diverse group of film fans. It would just be a very specific group of people. So you kind of need the Star Wars and the MCU to have these other films. But Sean, what do you think of that? Now that I brought up that point.
No, I agree. There is a place for blockbusters. There are people that prefer blockbusters more than niche films. Personally, I kind of prefer a lot of different films. I prefer niche films. Like, yes, I do love The Lighthouse, and also I have a review of that on the site if you want to check that out. Wrote that almost 2 years ago. Wow, time flies. But there is a place for niche films. There's a place for artsy films like Parasite. Parasite is one of the best movies ever made. But also, my favorite movie of all time is Empire Strikes Back. Okay, it is, in my opinion, the best film ever made, and it is perfect in every way. And I love Star Wars. I love the MCU. I'll prefer Star Wars over the MCU any day. I know I get a lot of, I know that's a hot take, but I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. I will always prefer Star Wars over the MCU. But there's a place in society for blockbusters because, as you said, that allows other people to be interested in other films. Because if you see Star Wars MCU, but you see a trailer for a more niche film, people maybe want to go see that. Since they have to watch the trailers anyways before the movie starts, unless you purposely get there late to miss them. And like, why do we have to bash things? Like, I understand, Evan, you don't like Black Widow, totally fine. But why are we blasting entire genres that people enjoy? Why can't we just let people enjoy things? And like, if you only care about like artsy, sad, dramatic films, then go for it. But don't bash other people for enjoying other things. That's just disrespectful. Like, stop.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you guys. I love the blockbuster films 9 times out of 10. I didn't get the emotional connection from this movie. But like you guys said, I'm with you, Sean. Star Wars over MCU every single day of the week, every day of the year. Star Wars is always above MCU in my mind. But I think that's what's special about blockbusters is when you go see them, they matter so much and they're usually just bangers, like you go in and it's just great movie front to back. There's the good dialogue scenes, there's your little one-liner jokes, and you got your intense character moments. I didn't see that in Black Widow. And I felt like Black Widow deserved to be a blockbuster, and I felt like it was more of a niche, however you say it, action film, like very, very niche action film. But at the end of the day, we need our blockbusters to make other films thrive as well, and I think that's a very important point.
Now we had the Loki finale on Wednesday, and honestly, while only 6 episodes long, it's honestly one of my favorite shows ever. I mean, I know season 2 kind of has to stick a landing since it did get revealed in the finale and the mid-credit scene that we will get a season 2, but man, just Loki hit the right notes everywhere. And Tom Hiddleston, while the MCU it felt like underlie just how good Hiddleston was as an actor, I think that really came to its entirety in this show because you got 6 episodes around 40-45 minutes each where you get to see his deep character development and just he's not that straight villain to, hey, he's comedic relief in the Dark World and Ragnarok. And then, we kind of saw him fully fleshed out, but only for that little opening scene in Infinity War where we saw, okay, this is Loki's true character. But seeing a 2012 version of this, the guy that wanted to take over Earth and rule the 9 realms and just be a ruler, kind of, take that step back and go, wow, I'm pretty garbage person when he goes to the TVA. Just see him break in episode 1 kind of really floored me a little bit because you wouldn't expect that to come from a Loki that just recently was invading New York and got arrested and found his way to get the Tesseract and then set himself back in time, which he became a variant after that. But just to see his development and Hiddleston's performances along with Sophia DiMartino taking over as Sylvie, which Sylvie is already one of my favorite characters in the MCU now. I mean, Wanda and Scarlet Witch, that's not going to change. Still top brass in the MCU, but Sylvie is up there quickly. Just this show was just written almost perfectly. I don't have really any flaws. Now, kind of a bit convoluted ending with how it went about, but obviously that'll get more explained when we get to season 2. But Sean, just tell the people how great this show was.
Oh, it was absolutely awesome. I would say that it is probably my 4th favorite MCU project. The only 3 things that top it are Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, and the best MCU film, Thor Ragnarok. Yes, I said it. Okay, and I'll say it forever. Yes, I know. The one made this so great was that it hit all the right emotional notes. You saw Loki being very entertaining, but have tremendous character development. You had an ending that made me really upset. Obviously, Sylvie wanted to kill, He Who Remains, but the way he did it upset me, but in a very, very good way, because this show made you so invested that you fell for Loki when he got shoved through the TIM pad. you really felt for him, and you just saw him basically crying, and then Sylvie crying after realizing that vengeance didn't fulfill her. It was just so emotional, and it was absolutely fantastic in the ending, where Mobius doesn't know who Loki is, was kind of insane. And also, I have to say this: Jonathan Majors was absolutely awesome as He Who Remains. Cameron, you tweeted this, and this is the best tweet of the whole show I've ever seen. Jonathan Majors could have a 2-hour monologue, and he would have my undivided attention. I think that is the perfect way to sum it up. When you first see He Who Remains getting introduced, and he was very quirky and weird, I'm just like, all right. After like 20 minutes, I'm like, who is it? Who is it? Who is it? And then you just see this guy, and he just starts like acting very weird. I'm just like, okay, where are we going with this?
Well, first off, when they first got to the Citadel, we had the full out jump scare of Miss Minutes popping out and saying, "Hey, y'all!" Like just to the into the camera and almost breaking the fourth wall. Like I kind of jumped back a little bit.
I did too.
Terrifying in that one scene. Like it looked like a completely different character. Like it kind of like threw me off a little bit. Like, oh, I knew she was behind something. Like she had her hands in this somehow, but was just really a messenger for He Who Remains.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no, I jumped when that scene too. I definitely leapt off my couch a few inches. But yeah, Jonathan Majors, the whole dialogue scene of him explaining everything was amazing. I had my undivided attention. I was laser focused on what he was saying. It was one of the most entertaining just dialogue scenes I've ever seen. I was so enthralled and captivated. It was awesome. And every episode was just chaotic. It was ridiculous. It was fun. It was emotional. It was absolutely fantastic. Basically, 10 out of 10, I have no complaints with it. Every episode was a masterpiece. And yeah, check out John Winthrop's review of it, which will be out in about an hour and 22 minutes.
I have not watched Loki yet, but with you two talking about it just now, I'll be honest, I'm excited to check it out once I get around to it.
You're like a Twilight Zone guy that's sort of around where that is, just without like a narrator at the start of the show. It's definitely different than what you would normally see in the MCU, in my opinion. Yes, there's like action stuff and a lot of CGI, like heavy CGI pieces, but overall it's just a fun watch and really sets the tone for what we're gonna get for the remainder of Phase 4. But we're gonna go back into the sporting world, Formula One, and it's going to be a diverse opinions, going to be pretty much divided depending on what happens tomorrow and Sunday. But F1 is debuting a sprint weekend. They are actually qualifying for the sprint race on Saturday right now. And then that sprint race, which will consist of 17 laps, no pit stops on Saturday at Silverstone, will then set the field for Sunday, which I believe it's very convoluted. I like just my qualifying the race days, but it is what it is, I guess. But Sean, I know you're our big F1 coverage guy. So are you open to a sprint weekend? More racing. You can't really go wrong with more racing, but still, it's just convoluted, especially if you're a new fan coming in. ESPN doing bigger numbers, seems like week in and week out with Formula One. And now you throw in this new format for a race weekend. We'll see if it sticks to the landing or not. But hey, it could shake up the field, could shake up strategies for Sunday. Just what do you think going into this weekend?
I absolutely hate it. The more I think about it, I'm sorry. I hate it. Here, Nico Rosberg, I think, summed it up the best. You should not be qualifying for a sprint race, then that puts you on the pole. Do you know how obscure poles are now going to be in F1? You basically just took away the potency of earning a pole in qualifying. Qualifying is one of the most thrilling spectacles in all of sports. Why? Because you're pushing your cars to the absolute limit. It's not like NASCAR where you just go in an oval for one lap. I'm sorry, NASCAR qualifying has nothing on F1 qualifying. Sorry, Cameron. But F1 qualifying is amazing, especially when you're on a street course like Monaco or Baku. You know how crazy those two qualifyings were? Like absolute insanity. Oh my gosh. Baku qualifying especially was absolute insanity, along with Monaco as well. And you took away that. I mean, I get Silverstone is a very fast track and it's a little more NASCAR-esque considering how fast it is and how kind of a little bit easy the track is, so to speak, because it's one of the faster ones. But I hate it because qualifying, you push your car to the limit and the battles are so close. There are people that are missing Q3 by by 0.0002 seconds. Okay. That is awesome. That is entertaining. Sprint races, you're basically just handing Max Verstappen a pole. You're basically forcing a possible Rex in the race, and they have to start a pole when they did good in qualifying. It's stupid. I'm sorry. It is stupid. Now, I will still be interested to see how it goes on Saturday. I will definitely check it out tomorrow morning before I go to work. But I don't know, man. I don't know how this is going to be a good thing. And I hope that this is abandoned after this year. And I hope it's a failure just because I like the qualifying and then the race. Okay. Just keep it the way it is. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Evan, nothing. You got nothing on. But what do you think? It's just, it's more racing, but at the end of the day, there could be some issues where, we're in a tight championship battle still. It seems like Red Bull's taking over. But what if, with no pit stops in this race, only 17 laps, what if Max were to have a problem in a sprint race and have to start in the back of the grid, on Sunday? It could ruin a lot of, we're going to have a shakeup in constructor points and in driver points, depending on what plays out Saturday. This Sunday could be a deciding factor in our championship race or not. Lewis could get right back in, or let's say Lewis has a problem on his home course that could ruin his chances of catching back up with Max. Just it's a big swing to take when we're in the middle of the season.
Yeah, definitely. When you put it like that, it kind of feels like how the MLB overreacted to the pitcher's substance use recently in the past couple of weeks here. I don't know if they're trying to, mid-season, I don't know if they had this announced before the season started that they were going to be doing this, but it seems that it's kind of coming out of nowhere, and it's just so they can possibly make it more interesting with Max Verstappen running away with wins. But it just, why now? Who was talked to in this? Where the drivers consulted? It just, like Sean said, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. If things are going well for F1 right now, I don't understand why they would need to change up the race, change up the way that they're doing qualifying, adding a race stage to qualifying to determine placement for the actual. It's weird and it doesn't make sense. I guess, new fans who hop on and just watch that stream and get to learn it from that day, it might be a little bit weird if they don't go back to that next weekend, But, it's just, again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And what are our thoughts on the first look at the 2022 car? Definitely has an old school look, looking more like an Indy Lights or Indy car design. But the whole goal of 2022 and beyond for Formula One is that they want to produce closer racing, which on the NASCAR side did not pan out well with the high downforce car. But F1 obviously is a lot faster, more horsepower, so downforce is actually a good thing. You could get more racing, closer racing, but F1 says better racing, while NASCAR says, well, we want to impress OEMs and, get more manufacturers in. Their goal isn't better racing. It's to what's better and more cost efficient for owners. So very different ideologies between F1 and NASCAR. But I guess my only concern about, potential closer racing is that, the danger in F1. It's high speed. Yes, racing just in its own nature is dangerous, but you got guys running 3-4 cars that could be within 2 seconds, and maybe in a single straightaway, they're all on each other drafting, and it just leads to some tight situations. So look, I think I'm open for better racing. F1, if you get behind someone, you either have to have a great exit on your corner and then use that DRS to get that run and make it pass. That's really the only opportunity. But if this new car and the way they're going about aerodynamics, kind of reduces that downforce a lot when you get behind the car to, keep your car on a straight line and stay behind that guy without losing time. That's perfect in my opinion. I hate when guys get to the back of somebody and then they have to drop a second and a half because they have no clean air. Their car is always running loose because they don't have that clean air, and that downforce is pretty much gone when you get behind somebody. So whatever makes better racing. Closer racing is not what you want. Better racing is what all motorsports need. Whatever you can to achieve that goal of better racing, I am open to. And F1 seems to want to achieve that goal. So, Sean, when you first looked at the 2022 car, what were your first impressions?
Honestly, I loved it. So obviously, the current car now is what it looked like when I first got into F1. So obviously that'll hold some sentimental value for me. But when it comes to this new car, here's why I love it. And this is something that I don't see anyone talking about. The cars are bulkier. Do you know why that's good? Because if they tap cars, there is less impact and less chance of them DNFing. So the bulkier design will allow them to withstand a little more impacts, maybe get a little more physical with each other on the track, and they'll be able to continue going even if they make contact. Because let's be real, these new cars now are a bit fragile. Okay, like Lewis Hamilton, had very, very small contact in the Austrian Grand Prix. He ended up finishing 4th when he was running 2nd the entire race. So you basically have a bulkier car, so that'll be good. And the racing should be a little closer. The car should, have a little less clean air, so therefore it's a little dependent on driver ability, which should be pretty fun to see. So I'm all for this personally.
Again, the biggest thing I noticed when I was just looking at the pictures of the two car comparisons side by side is, like Sean said, the newer one's a little bit beefier, probably a little bit safer for those drivers. I know they're zipping through those courses at high speed, and it's like, I mean, just watching F1 highlights is insane, like nothing I've ever seen. Like they're just going and just like all over the place. It's like, I don't know. It reminds me of a small, shifty running back cutting through between the tackle and the left guard, just on the left side, just taking that sweep out to the left and then just up the other direction, gone. It's crazy. And I don't know. I feel like, yeah, they are pretty close to each other. The tracks are tight, so having a little bit beefier design to protect the drivers can be good. So, I mean, this is something I think F1 did well with, is the new car design, making it a little bit safer for the drivers. Driver safety is important. And also being able to race a little bit closer without, like Sean said, DNFing, that's going to be huge.
With the Euro now over, I think we're all starting to get those, especially with it being mid-July, that we're starting to get those football withdrawals. It's been a long time since we've seen any games on the gridiron, and we got training camp approaching, so at least we have that to look forward to. Can't wait for Hard Knocks with the Dallas Cowboys, because that's always the start. When I first hear that Hard Knocks theme, that means the NFL season has begun. I can't wait. I know Evan and Sean can't wait as well, but we're going to start with the Green Bay Packers. Gentlemen, it's straight up question. Will Aaron Rodgers be the starter of the Green Bay Packers come September? We'll start with Evan.
Yes. I think there's no way that Aaron's out of Green Bay. They're not trading him. And he's not going to retire. Too much money on the table. He's going to be in Green Bay. He's just going to be disgruntled.
No, he'll play. Aaron Rodgers is not going to ruin his reputation by just sitting out. He's not going to do that. He's not going to play as well this year, though, just because the chemistry is off. And I think that the Packers are going to struggle a bit. Also, low-key, the Vikings are going to be a much better team this season. So the Packers aren't just going to cruise to a division title like they did last season. But I just don't think there's any way that Aaron Rodgers doesn't play week 1. He'll probably sit out a bit in training camp. And also, you really think Davante Adams is not going to try to make sure that doesn't happen? Of course he won't. And this is the last year Davante Adams' contract. So Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I know more teams that could use wide receivers and potentially quarterback if the other, underwhelms once again for like a fourth, fifth straight season in a row. But I think the cool thing here, especially with Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, just is having the time of his life in Tampa Bay, away from Bill Belichick. Just seeing Rodgers and Tom Brady just connect, and going to Montana to go play golf. I think we're just seeing a nicer side of these guys, a more personable side, because you think quarterback, especially when Tom Brady was in New England, he wasn't a guy that was very open about his personal life and just what he does outside of football. But now that he's away, he's having fun in Tampa. I don't think he's ever had this much fun in his entire career, even with all the success he had in New England. I'm sorry to tell you that, Sean, but Tom Brady just wasn't. Tom Brady was kind of a guy that was like, yeah, he was kind of just enigma. He was this enigma, but he wasn't a guy that was like, yeah, he's talking all the time, kind of having fun. He just seemed very serious and all about football. We didn't really hear about Tom Brady until it was time for another season to begin. But now in Tampa Bay, he's hilarious on social media. Tom Brady could not be funnier. I'm just glad to see this side of Tom finally come out at the end of his career. Well, who knows if it's the end of his career or not, because it seems like this guy could play until he's 50, really. And Sean, how old is he? 43 now?
He is going to be 44 this season.
Still playing at the top of his game. It's unbelievable what Tom Brady has accomplished. And while a lot of us Patriot haters will, hate to say that, especially how Tom Brady's first Super Bowl came about.
Stop.
I have nothing but admiration for Tom Brady now. Just an absolute legend. That's nothing else I can really say about that. But speaking of the Patriots, we have an interesting quarterback battle. Now, Cam Newton and the Patriots did struggle last year because Cam did catch COVID and it did really affect his health throughout the second half of the season. And then there's Mac Jones, who's had a great career at Alabama. And, there's some upside to go with as well if he were to become the starter at some point for New England, and New England's going to return a lot of their defense. So that might get fixed up to where they can be competitive in the AFC and potentially get a wild card spot. But Sean, you're our big New England guy. So at this point, who do you look to as your starter? Do you stick with Cam and hope maybe we get somewhat a little bit of that prime Cam Newton, or you're like, okay, let's go all in and go with the guy we drafted in the first round?
I got to be honest here. It's a very tough question. Let me quickly touch on Tom Brady real quick since you mentioned him. So yeah, Tom Brady turns 44 on August 3rd, which is in like a couple weeks. Yeah, Tom Brady will be 44, and he was 43 last season. And it is recently revealed that he played the entire season last year on a torn MCL. He was 43, played on a torn MCL, and he won Super Bowl MVP. Are you kidding? This guy isn't human. But yeah, he's also a very hilarious and nice guy. Like, how? Like, Tampa Bay is seriously the most fortunate franchise ever to have picked this guy up. And notice an interesting pattern. The three best quarterbacks of all time all finished their careers with a different team. Tom Brady's finishing career in Tampa Bay, Peyton Manning finished his career in Denver, and Joe Montana finished his career in Kansas City, although Joe Montana was miserable in Kansas City. So that didn't work out as well as it did for Brady and Manning because, Brady and Manning both won Super Bowls with their new team. But it goes to show that, the culture is much looser. And while I think that calling Bill Belichick a Robin like you did on Monday is a little bit of a stretch because I still think that Bill Belichick's a great coach and one of the best ever. I'm definitely glad that Tom Brady gets to be more looser. And yes, as a Patriot fan, it hurt to see him win a team within the Super Bowl. But at the same time, he and Rob Gronkowski, they are my two favorite players. I grew up watching them too. Ever since I started watching football, like in 2004, yes, I am that old. Tom Brady has been one of the best in football. And seeing him in Tampa Bay is obviously pretty fun to see. And I have almost no doubt that they're going to win another Super Bowl this season. Now, to answer the question about the Patriots now, this is tough. Obviously, writing all my Patriots perusals last season, I kind of noticed while I was writing all of those that Cam Newton would sometimes throw for 70 yards in a game. Okay, trust me, looking at the Patriots box scores was painful. last season. There was the Patriots one game had almost 100 yards of total offense, and they somehow still beat the Arizona Cardinals. One of the weirdest games I've ever seen in my life. Okay, so it's an interesting question. Cam Newton was pretty good before COVID, and the wide receiving core is much improved this season. And I think that Cam Newton should be the week one starter. Mac Jones, I saw some tape of him in practice and in OTAs, and yikes. Did not like what I saw. And also, Cam Newton does have that chemistry with Jacoby Myers. Yes, Jacoby Myers was the best receiver last season. That's how bad our receiving core was last season. No offense to Jacoby Myers, great slot guy. But you had Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne, who are also two speedy guys over the middle of the field. And I think Cam Newton will be able to do well with them. And with the Patriots upgrades all over the roster, I think that Cam Newton will be better. But if Cam Newton struggles the first couple weeks, get him out of there. At least this season, the good backup option, because you know who the backup option was last year? Jarrett Stidham. Yikes. That was, yeah. I had to watch Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer on a Monday evening go up against Kansas City. Yeah, I hated that game with a burning passion. So I'm glad that there's actually a hope for the future with the quarterback position.
The Patriots starting job come season will entirely depend on where Bill Belichick sees Mac Jones and where he is in picking up the playbook and the audibles and the calls. And depending, like, a lot of it for the quarterback job is just how fluid are you within the playbook your first year learning it. And the closer Mac Jones can get to that, the closer he will be to starting. But as long as he's wearing number 50 in practice and getting treated like the second string quarterback, he's going to be the Patriots number 2 guy. I think Cam Newton definitely does have a little bit of chemistry from last year. Plus he's picked up the offense a little bit with 1 year in it. And he had no help last year. He had no one in his receiving corps that was worth anything last season. So I feel like it's hard to hold Cam's passing yards numbers against him from last season because the Patriots had virtually no passing offense from the receiver game. But I don't know. It's such a toss-up for me because I don't think Mac Jones should have been a first-round quarterback. He's coming out of Alabama, the greatest system in college football for quarterbacks. I feel like the Patriots are in a little bit of a rough spot here, but I think if anyone can train Mac Jones to be the next starting quarterback for the Patriots, I think Bill Belichick could take up that challenge, and I think he could get Mac Jones to a place to be a starting quarterback. I just think Cam Newton, too early in the season, will have a better grasp of the playbook, and when someone knows the playbook better than someone else, it's hard to start the other player in that situation because everyone in the locker room knows it. Everyone in the locker room sees how that guy reads the playbook, goes through his checks, goes through his reads, goes through his decision-making process. And then the receivers know how you deliver the football. So, I mean, until the entire team is bought in on Mac Jones as their starting quarterback, it's Cam's job to lose.
Now, just the update, because I pulled up a stream of F1 qualifying right now, and then they're in their final out laps. George Russell just put down a lap to get him at P7, putting him in front of both Ferraris, looks like, for the grid for the sprint qualifying race. So this is impressive. And Lewis Hamilton has jumped Verstappen as of now for pole. So he's got provisional pole, and we'll see what happens on this final lap. But looks to be a dramatic qualifying session for a sprint qualifying race. So, I mean, I guess we'll see what happens tomorrow to set the actual field for the full race. But I mean, it seems to be another great qualifying session on a Friday of all days. But finally, we've got quarterbacks that are on the hot seat this year, and there's 3 that stand out to me specifically. Those that either have been struggling, and those that really can't get out of a threshold of being a 500 team, a team that should be in the playoffs, but struggles in late November, early December. And those quarterbacks are Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo for reasons that there could be another guy coming up that could take his spot in Trey Lance. But gentlemen, who is under the most pressure going into the season? Is it Carr, Cousins, or Jimmy Garoppolo?
First of all, one quick thing I want to say about F1 qualifying. Why hasn't George Russell gotten announced in Mercedes yet? The guy just qualified P7 with Williams. Ahead of
Hamilton on
Ferrari.
pole, by the way. George Russell got P8 because Leclerc got to P5. So it'll be Hamilton on pole for the sprint race tomorrow.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I really want Hamilton to win this weekend. I can't believe I'm saying that because we need the championship race to get closer. But yes, George Russell just qualified P8 for Williams ahead of Carlos Sainz. Why hasn't he gotten announced yet at Mercedes? Why? I get there's a whole bunch of reasons why, but I don't care about any of them. Just announce it, please. Like now. Sorry, I'm going to be saying that I'm going to be very annoying about that until it's officially announced. But as far as quarterback under the most pressure, okay. The obvious answer here is Jimmy Garoppolo, because obviously there's Trey Lance in the works. But I'm going to make this a little more interesting, and I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins. Here's the thing. The Minnesota Vikings, this is a big year for this franchise because last year the Vikings were not a very good team. They were atrocious defensively. And Dalvin Cook literally carried them to whatever success they had last season. Yeah, the Vikings somehow won at Lambeau Field last year. I don't know how they pulled that off, but they did. The only reason they were good is because Dalvin Cook just tore up the league last season. And the previous year, the Vikings did get to the divisional round by beating the Saints, but the only reason they really did that is because their defense was good that year. They're very dependent on how Mike Zimmer's defense is. And I've been saying this. I think I said this on the Winning Fix with you, Evan. Mike Zimmer's schemes are very outdated. He plays very soft zone defense, but the cornerbacks are not exactly the best on the team. They did make some improvements on the defensive side of the ball, but they're going to have to get better because you're in division with the Bears who may not be as good as they were last year defensively because they lost Kyle Fuller, one of the best corners in the NFL. And the Lions are going to be worse than they were a season ago. So this is a big chance for the Vikings. And if Kirk Cousins can't get it done, then they may have to blow things up, get a new coach, get a new quarterback, be terrible for a few years, work your way back up. The Vikings have not been bad at all since 2014 when Mike Zimmer took control. The Vikings have been always a decent team, but the primetime thing, Kirk Cousins has struggled. I know he finally won his first Monday Night Football game last season. Congratulations. You want a cookie or something? But he has two really big games. I was watching the Herd with Colin Cowherd, and he mentioned two games that the Vikings have on their schedule that are enormous. They play the 49ers, who destroyed them in the 2019 divisional playoff round, and they play the Dallas Cowboys. And if they lose to both of those teams, the Vikings will not make the playoffs because the NFC is loaded. The Bucs are going to win their division. The Rams, Seahawks, 49ers, Cardinals, they're all going to contend for the playoffs. Obviously, you got the NFC East winner. The Kirk Cousins is going to have to lead his team to victory over the 49ers and the Cowboys if they're going to make the playoffs. And if he can't get it done, I think the Vikings need to blow things up because you're stuck in mediocrity as much as any team in the NFL. If you want to be better than that, got to beat those two teams. So that's why I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins, even though Jimmy Garoppolo is the obvious answer.
Jimmy Garoppolo is the obvious answer, like you said, Sean. The 49ers drafted a quarterback within the top 3 selections of this year's draft to replace him. So, seat might be kind of hot, just a little bit. But no, I definitely think that both of these other quarterbacks have some competition on their heels. But if you look at Derek Carr, when he got injured late last season and had to go out of that Chargers Raiders game, I think it was on Thursday Night Football, and he popped his groin, had to sit down. Marcus Mariota came in and played a good game. So, I really like Marcus Mariota from Oregon. He was my first college football star that I fell in love with. So I'm a big Mariota fan. And I think if Carr struggles early on in the season, John Gruden might just make the move to go and switch to Mariota. I think Mariota still has some ability. I think he could still deliver the football. I think Tennessee just didn't work out because Tennessee wasn't good at the time. I know Tannehill's kind of filled in his spot now, and they have a little bit of a different offense with Derrick Henry absolutely demolishing. But I think the quarterback competition between Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota might be a lot closer than a lot of people think. And then with the Vikings, they drafted Kellen Mond this year, who is honestly the dark horse candidate quarterback out of this draft to go in the later rounds and potentially see some success later in his career if you follow media narratives at all. But I mean, Kellen Mond could definitely pressure Kirk Cousins a little bit if Kirk Cousins is just not performing like early on in the season. I don't think it'll happen. I think that's one of the longest shots that we have, but because I don't know, I just don't feel like a 5th round quarterback's in a place to pressure Kirk Cousins for his job. But at the same time, it could be interesting to follow if all 3 of these quarterbacks absolutely suck and we see Mariota, Kellen Mond, and Trey Lance take over for these 3 teams next season.
I like your thinking. And here's the bold take I will throw out. This will be the year of the Oregon Ducks quarterbacks because Marcus Mariota will be starting for the Raiders at some point, whether or not Derek Carr is healthy or not. That's beside the point. And Justin Herbert will win MVP and lead the Chargers to an 11-win season. And they will make the playoffs.
Okay, first of all, I know
Justin Herbert for MVP. He shined the most in 2020, Sean. There is no stopping Justin Herbert. As much as I don't like the Chargers because of my Raider fandom, Justin Herbert. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Sean, I know. Keep running your narratives that Justin Herbert isn't a good quarterback.
I know. Whoa.
You were not a big fan of this guy when he got drafted. So you were like, oh,
when
he's
he
not
was
that good.
When he was drafted, okay, but when he started playing, I was like, to give this guy Rookie of the Year before, halfway through the season. Okay, stop. Okay, I've already eaten my words about Justin Herbert before. Like, literally, his first game against the Kansas City Chiefs made me realize that I made a mistake. Okay, see, unlike some people, I'm actually willing to admit my mistakes. But also, I'm sorry, Justin Herbert is great, but I'm sorry, like, Justin Herbert is not winning MVP. That is a very, very bold take. Chargers are going to make the playoffs. The answer is yes. The Chargers are making the playoffs. But MVP, that is a bit bold because I think it'll be Josh Allen.
Yawn.
He's in my division, okay?
Boo.
And I don't like that either.
Boo.
That for real just made my day, though. You guys saying that the Chargers are making the playoffs, I wasn't ready to make that claim, but thank you. I'm going to have the best weekend of my life.
Best weekend of your life when we're still 2 months out from the season. All right, time to get into our final segment of the weekend. It's our Fruit Loops of the weekend. I'm just going to get mine out of the way because being an LA resident, I am infuriated because I've done my part in keeping people safe. I got vaccinated. There's nothing wrong with me yet. As I know of, government ain't got anything on me yet. You know, I'm 3 months into being vaccinated. Nothing's happened to me yet. I don't know why we're just not doing it. It's free. You know, you can get back to living your normal life that y'all that said, hey, I want free will and all this, and now all of a sudden you're taking that away from everyone that's doing their job. Why can't, like Sylvie said in her introduction to Loki, this isn't about you. This is about, just the greater good and just giving back to the lives we lived in 2019 and earlier in 2020. Just do your part, so what if you have to get a little shot, 2 little shots in your arm? Look, Sean and I have been vaccinated. Evan, I don't know if you have or not, but can we just do our part, please? I mean, every single COVID hospitalization as of right now is someone who isn't vaccinated. Just do your part. Honestly, I don't want, because tomorrow, guess what? LA County is going back to wearing masks indoors. So thanks a lot, you absolute idiots out there that still are choosing to go unvaccinated at this point. I'm sorry, but that's where we're at right now. Those that wanted to open everything back up are going to be the sole reason that we close back down again and why games are going to be at quarter attendance. I'm sick of it. I'm tired. I've had enough. I've done my part. It's time for everybody else to do theirs. That's all I got. Sean, who you got as your Fruit Loop of the week?
Yes, for just touching on yours real quick. Yes, I also me and Cameron got vaccinated together and very happy with it. I have
Cam got
barely
political.
I have hardly worn a mask in the last couple months and it's been absolutely awesome. I work at Target. I don't actually have to wear a mask while working at Target. It's awesome. Okay. So I've been doing my part and almost everyone has been doing their part as well. And just get vaccinated. It's not hard. I hate shots. Okay. I get scared. I'm scared of needles. Okay. And I still got vaccinated. And yes, you're uncomfortable for the next day. Okay. But you don't have to go out and wear a mask. It's so nice. It's so nice. Just seriously, get vaccinated, people. It's not hard. It's literally free. You can go into your local Walgreens or Target or Walmart and get vaccinated. It's not hard, people. Anyways, sorry, I digress.
And there's two things. There's one thing people love. It's anything that begins with free. It's free. You don't gotta pay for it. Free.
Yes. Okay. Then we go to my Fruit Loop, which is something that upsets me even more than this. Look, your 2020 was absolutely sensational. And it was great in pretty much every way. There were a lot of great matches. There were 4 penalty shootouts, which is always great. There was a lot of great goals, a lot of great upsets. Switzerland beating France was the thing I'll remember the most from Euro 2020 because that was one of the most insane matches I've ever seen. But unfortunately, it did not end well. The Euro final itself was absolutely sensational. You had a great battle between Italy and England. Literally, Luke Shaw scored in the second minute. So the match was thrilling from start to finish, and I loved the Euro final. But fortunately, England fans kind of had to ruin it, and I'm upset. Wembley Stadium should never host another international final ever, especially if England's involved. The way England fans carried themselves out on Sunday was absolutely disgusting. First of all, they broke down the gates. If you want to go inside, pay for it. Okay, it's called capitalism. All right. Second of all, they were so unruly trying to get into that they literally crushed people. Oh, by the way, you remember back in the 1980s at Middlesbrough, or I think it was Middlesbrough, something like that, where a lot of fans died because they were crushed because of how people were entering. Okay. Harry Maguire's dad literally had some broken ribs because of the fans. Really? Also, in this, going back to the semifinal against Denmark, you're pointing a laser at Kasper Schmeichel, pointing a laser at him. Are you serious? That is disgusting. And then you have the audacity to be racist. You're 2021 and you're still racist. I understand that you're disappointed that you lost a penalty shootout, but you don't have to be racist about it. Okay. Bakio Saka, Marcus Rashford, and Jadon Sancho. First of all, Jason Sudeikis, who plays Ted Lasso, had a shirt with all 3 of their last names on it at the season 2 premiere Ted Lasso. Awesome gesture. I just got to point that out. See, there's actually good people out there, even celebrities. But to be racist, to crush other fans, to be unruly security, there's a reason that everyone outside of England hates England. Okay. Before the Euro 2020 final, there was a map showing who everyone's supporting for the Euro 2020 final. Every single country outside of England was supporting Italy. Okay. Everyone was happy Italy won this final outside of England. Nobody likes England. I don't understand why your little brother likes them, Cameron. Like why? Okay. You need to have a word with them there because England. Here's the thing. I hate Brazil. I can't stand Brazil, and I'm so happy. Brazil and England are my 2 least favorite international teams, and they lost their respective finals. So last weekend was great, but to see what England fans did was a bit disgusting. It kind of ended Euro 2020 a bit of a sour note, and I'm very disgusted. And I hope that England never wins another international trophy because they don't deserve it. Also, I'm just going to end with this. During England matches, domestic violence in England rises 26%. When England loses, it goes up to 38%. That is absolutely disgusting. And I can't tell you how much England fans are the worst. There's a reason the term hooligan is created because of England fans. I hope they never win another international trophy. I hope they lose in the World Cup final just so they can know what a heartbreak is like. But stop being racist. Stop abusing your significant others. Stop crashing security. Stop pointing lasers at people. It really makes you cynical in humanity because of these England fans. Sports is great. Look, I get upset when the Patriots lose Super Bowl. I had to deal with that 3 times. Or I have to deal with Arsenal losing. I have to deal with the Nuggets being disappointed. I have to deal with the Avalanche choking in the second round 3 years in a row. But I don't take that on anybody, and I just don't. I'm not a bad person afterwards, and I'm disappointed. Okay, just stop. It's just upsetting.
Bring us home, Evan. Bring us home.
I want to piggyback off of Sean real quick first off of what he said. With England, the biggest issue with all of that is after that match, I didn't see any news about celebrations in Italy, with their team. I only heard about the negative stuff from the English side. I only heard about their fans being racist and, just terrible actions. So, I feel like their fans and their team should be held responsible for the actions of their country. I don't know if they should be allowed to compete in Euros next year. Because, when you're taking that much away from the victors of the cup as the loser of the cup, where their victory celebrations are a minor story compared to you guys reacting to losing a soccer game, it's ridiculous. And I think England fans need to take a long look in the mirror because they're very quick to give us American football fans crap on, oh, you guys take it too seriously. Yeah, we don't go home and beat our wives after our team loses, though. So, come on, England. Get it right. And then to bring it home, officiating across sports over the past couple months have just been terrible. I feel like in the MLB, we've had our issues. I feel like all NBA season, we've had issues. And then it's only right that it affects the finals and a player finishes a game with 9 fouls, only 5 called. And I don't know. It's just, and then at the same time, the Big 12 officiating committee comes out and announces that they will be watching during every Texas football game. If anyone on the other team does horns down, they will be receiving a personal foul penalty. College refs are bad enough as it is. They don't know how to call a game right as it is. Every Saturday, you turn on college football, you're going to see a ref blow a call and affect a game in some big way. And now they're worried about other players on the other team doing the little horns down. Texas is soft. The Big 12 officiating is soft. It's ridiculous at this point that you're going to ask your zebras to look out on the other side for people literally just doing Texas does horns up. Everyone else horns down. It's just a thing in college football. And the fact that the officiating is getting in the middle of it instead of focusing on actually officiating the game is just disappointing and it's disgusting. And then with the NBA refs missing calls and intentionally, clearly not calling fouls to keep Devin Booker in the game during the finals. It's just been a bad week and I want to put all refs on blast.
That will do it for this edition of the Rich Report. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. If you did, subscribe to our YouTube to be notified whenever we go live. We're also on Facebook and Twitter as well. All our social medias are on the description in YouTube as well. Make sure to hit that notification bell. Check out all of our rating content on therichport.com. Got a lot of stuff coming out this weekend and today as well. For Evan McNelia and Sean Clark, I'm Cameron Richardson, and we will see y'all on Monday to recap everything that happened this weekend. Have a great rest of your day and have a great weekend.